All right, who's listening to music? Okay, so stand by. 30 seconds. Stand by. Hey, we are live on this biddle, finally. Saturday, April 20th, 2019. It's not exactly working properly, or it wasn't, but hopefully you're seeing it now. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if we can get away with this, all right? Yeah. Anyway, how's everybody doing? So I ended up switching from the Restream key over to just YouTube, so we're not going to be live on Twitch because I can't get it to work Restream right now. So there you have that. Hey, thank you, Tony. Thank you for the sound. Now the stream health does say it's not great, but I don't know why. It seems to be running okay. Whoa. All right, so this week we tried out Savvy on Linux, and well, some of us tried out Savvy on Linux because I didn't try out Savvy on Linux because I did not have time this week. So everything kind of like went away with time, and I didn't have time. So there you have that. That's good. Deb, did you get to try it?
What to do when it first comes out of the box is great. Installed NVIDIA drivers, black screen, you know what's coming. And I then tried it again later on in the week. And this time, strangely enough, I didn't get a black screen, but no matter what I did, I couldn't enable the NVIDIA drivers. So that's an immediate no-go for me. So I'm afraid it didn't get much beyond failing to install NVIDIA drivers and getting them working.
All right. Damn. Did you get to try it?
Yeah, actually, I tried installing it on 3 different systems.
Whoa.
2, for some reason, it just wouldn't boot from the USB. But when I burned it to a DVD, it would see it and load up fine. So I've got it installed on a drive on my laptop, and I've played with it for a couple hours or so. It's not bad. I installed the KDE version. I really like the menu setup in that. It was very intuitive and easy to follow for a Linux novice, I guess, not quite a newbie, but not having used KDE before, and I believe it's a Plasma. It looks fine, works fine. Just I have one system in our bedroom I tried it on, and it was the same thing. It was just, you'd get a black screen. Now, all 3 systems I'm driving it on all have an i7, or like my big rig here has an i9 in it. They all have NVIDIA GPUs. No issues installing it on my laptop with it. Tried it with a live CD on my i9 system, no problem. But for some reason, my upstairs one, which is an i7 with a GTX 1080 in it, it just black screen every time, no matter what I try.
It's no good. Now, how much did you actually try it? Like, did you get into the package manager or anything? Because I know a couple of people have said, warned me about, hey, it's going to be slow or it's going to be different. Did you get into any of that at all?
I looked at everything. I didn't really play with a lot of it. I didn't try installing everything, but then again, my laptop's fairly powerful, so to me it ran fine. Right. I didn't notice anything slow.
Well, I would think that like the way they were commenting, I would think that you would notice it right away. So,
yeah. One of the things that I really did like is that my main system is dual monitors, and I have an external monitor connected to my laptop. I liked it right away when it came up. There was this big block on the screen, and it had all these options, whether you want to use one screen, that screen. I can't remember the term was all, where I could basically link both of them, and I just left it, or do nothing, and it scaled in 4K on my 232-inch 4K is fine, looks fine in 1080p on my laptop. But it was nice having that come up right away. It's like, okay, you got more than one monitor. What do you want to do?
Yeah, that's a plasma thing.
Yeah.
Yep. Zeb, I think we need to send a search party for Big Pod. He said that he's going to join us in a few minutes. He's still trapped in Windows. Peter, what'd you think?
I installed Savion, no problem at all, on my now spare Alienware M50X laptop, and install went fine, and booted up fine. It's XFCE, and very easy to use. I did try the package manager, both with the update and the GUI, and also on command line, and I installed INXI, and that took 10 minutes to install because of all the dependencies.
Wow.
So it was fun to watch it.
Now,
there was like 10 dependencies I had to download.
Did you do it with the GUI and the terminal separately?
No, I did the regular updates with the GUI, okay, and I did INXI with the terminal.
Okay.
And but that's all I got to test, because my house became a war zone after that.
I heard you had some shenanigans going on.
My kitchen, bathroom. So I'm no longer living in a war zone. All the fans have been taken away. I'm glad to be here.
That's good, man. Good to have you. Eric, sir.
Yes, I had a chance to test it out. It was a little bit of a blast from the past for me. I was a Gen 2 user for several years long ago, and used Savion at that time as well. So I didn't have any issues installing it. And the way I normally test a distro is I'll try to set up like my basic desktop, and then some dev stuff like Docker and some editors and things like that. And for the most part, most of those packages were available. I was able to go into the community repo to get the ones that weren't. And setting that up wasn't too bad. I just followed along on the wiki, and it explained how to do everything pretty well. I really didn't have many issues. The thing that it comes down to with something like this is the package manager was a little slower. It did take some extra effort. It reminded me sort of a Fedora setup where you had to go to other repositories to get things that weren't in the repo. Excuse me. I guess my thing with this is I'm just really comfortable running either an Arch-based or an Ubuntu-based system, which just makes more sense to me nowadays. I think for a long time, Gentoo was a great option for me for what I was doing with it. But now I think my needs are a lot simpler than they used to be. And honestly, it just seemed like it would be a lot of effort to maintain the system on an ongoing basis. And I could be wrong about that, but that was my first brush opinion of it. But it was really neat to get back in and play with Portage and the Portage tree and emerge a package and watch it compile. And I haven't done that in probably 10 years. So it was kind of fun from that nostalgic aspect to go back and look.
Now, would you say this is something that you could, like a beginner type Gentoo distribution where you could learn?
Yeah. So I would say, I'd compare it to something like Arco Linux on the Arch side, where, he provides a way for you to sort of get into Arch where you can start either at a very basic stage, or you can go all the way through to having a desktop environment. And that's sort of what this is. They make it easy for you to get the core system running, and then you can choose to use it how you want. So I was using the Equo package manager on the command line for the pre-compiled binaries, but you can also do Portage, which is the source-based component of Gentoo, where you're emerging packages and compiling them from source. So yeah, you could definitely use it in that respect. And given that, I would say it is a pretty good way to get into Gentoo. Although the purists will say, just like with Arch, it's not really that hard. And if you really want to learn,
Yeah.
go follow the wiki, and the instructions are really good. So before ArchWiki was a thing, the Gentoo wiki was the place to go for Linux information, at least for me back then. So it's still that way. It's very well documented. There's tons of information. And this is Gentoo proper, not necessarily Sabian. So yeah, it was interesting to go back and revisit it. And I think it's pretty well put together. I don't know what type of support they have, what type of volunteers, how many people are maintaining it. But I'm glad to see it's still there all these years later. So won't be running it ongoing.
Difference between Sabian and regular Gentoo?
It's a lot like an Arch derivative where the core system. So instead of excuse me, instead of having Gentoo, pure Gentoo, you are merging packages, meaning you're building them from source. So whenever you're compiling it on your system, and the advantage of that, at least in the past, maybe still a little bit today, is you were building it for your specific system. So you'd set the flags for your system, for your hardware, how you wanted it to run, and you could be very granular with how it built those packages and the type of dependencies you would need, and on and on and on. It was very involved, but rewarding if you were doing it for a specific purpose, like you were trying to tune a server, or you were trying to do something, very very intensive with hardware. You can get the most out of it. Yeah. So you can still do both, and that's kind of what's interesting about this, is they have the more common packages already built as binaries that you just basically download and install, versus having to compile everything. Because if you're compiling a Gentoo system from scratch, depending on your system, it can take a long time to compile all that. So it's a fast way to get into it. And then if you want to try to maintain or extend it from there, you can use the portage system to do that.
So now, would you say that if you're running Gentoo, Sabian if you're running with the Entropy Package Manager, would you say that defeats the whole purpose of running Gentoo, or would you say that it's
defeats the purpose? If the purpose is to learn about Gentoo, and I would say Gentoo is another flavor or distribution of Linux that really you can get deep down and understand the system on a very core level, which is what I think a lot of people appreciate about Arch. And so if you look at Arch, the trajectory of Arch, it's been around for a long time, and a lot of the purists like pure Arch, but now you have all these derivative systems that are making it easier to use Arch, Salient, Manjaro, Antergos. And so people like Arch and like the power that it gives you, but maybe they don't want to deal with having to install it from scratch every time. And I could see this would be a way to do that in the Gentoo realm as well.
Cool. All right, Joe, did you get a chance to try it this week?
I got a chance to attempt to try it, if that makes sense. I didn't use my regular test laptop. This was given to me. You see what's on here now because I gave up on the Sabian. So the other night, somebody had a virus on this. It's a friend of mine. I fixed it a couple times, and she said, I only use my phone and never use the laptop. So I thought, wow, maybe I'll try Sabian on this. And I tried XFCE. It went through the whole install, which I thought took quite a long time for some reason on here. I know in comparison to the only other Arch derivative that I've tried lately that I absolutely loved was Salient. I know there's a point that it gets, and it seems like it hangs at around 20-21%, and then boom, it blasts. And even that wasn't bad. This just seemed like it took forever. Went through the whole load, said it was successful, pulled the media out, did a reboot. It wouldn't boot up. And we just got to basically a black screen with a couple lines of text saying it was just hit enter to boot or reboot or whatever, and it kept just boot cycling. So then I thought, well, I'll try Mate version, and that wouldn't take it off. So I just basically went. I'm thinking Zeb popped into my head and said next. I just didn't have the patience to pull it out and decide to go try it on the other one, because I did ask in one of the I think it was Destination Linux yesterday. I asked if newer hardware, could potentially make a difference, and the answer was yes. But yet, I know we'll hear from Steve pretty soon, because he has a system that's very similar to this. It's a 2010 system, this does have an i3. It had 4 gigs of RAM in it. So, I mean, it's not like it's a slouch, but the hardware is by nowhere, no means new. So I don't know, I could very well try it on the other one, but I'm like, I enjoy trying these. In one breath, I feel like, is it fair to these developers if I don't really put a valid effort, the extra effort to just see if I can make it work and put all that work into it? Or do I just go past, especially if it's something that doesn't interest me quite as much as something else would? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I feel a little guilty about that for that reason, because the idea behind the reason we do this is to hopefully give feedback to the developers too. So, maybe, down the road, I might try it on the other machine just out of curiosity's sake, but that's where we're at.
That's where we're at. Okay, cool. Vash, welcome. And did you get to try it?
I got to try it a little bit. I ended up getting another project going, and then also just homework. But it installed fine. It took a little bit longer maybe than other distros that we've installed, but I mean, not a big deal. And it updated fine. It was fine. I just didn't get the time to mess with it much beyond that.
Mm-hmm. And what type of NVIDIA or what type of drivers do you have on your machine?
This is running an AMD card, so it didn't really
run into
matter.
those issues. Yeah, cool. All right. Well, thanks for that.
I honestly generally avoid my NVIDIA system at this point, just because it's a laptop, so it's a hybrid card anyway. So it's like good luck.
Yeah. No, Prime is quite difficult.
Team Green for the win.
Okay, Chris, tell us about your experience with Sabian.
I would recommend this for someone who wants to become a masochist. I really liked the opening menu where you had a selection. You had like 5 or 6 selections that you could go through, including testing the media and testing the RAM, etc., which you get with most everything else. But I like the fact that you could try to do a live install right from that window. I originally was going to try to do the open box only because I wanted to see if I could get anywhere with the workflow managers and the window tiling managers and stuff like that. And things seemed to go well until it wanted to do a reboot after the install, and it just would not find the boot device. And I had the same problem with Salient, and I knew what to do: go in and set the boot flag on the boot partition, and tried doing that, and it would not take it. Just kept saying no boot device, no boot device. So I decided to try downloading the other versions. I put the KDE version, same problem.
Mm-hmm.
So I put the live version of Salient in there, used gparted and set the boot flag for that partition, for the boot partition, and voila, it came up. And that was all well and great until until just before the stream started tonight. I have the system up and running with the stream monitor, and it would come out of the lock window. When it went to sleep, I couldn't wake it up. I couldn't do anything. I had to go into the command line and kill my GUI and restart it to get back in. And that's about my experience with it. I have not had much time to play with it other than that, just basically because I was having such a hard time getting it to boot after the install.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I am with that.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks very much indeed for that. Silence, how did you get on with Sabian?
Not very well. I had a similar experience to you. It booted okay and it went through the install process, but it doesn't like my 1080 at all. I just ended up with a black screen. It didn't matter what I tried. I did NVIDIA mode set 0, all sorts of things, and it didn't want to play. So next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I know, and it's interesting because I think Sam's got a 1080 as well on his machine upstairs, and he had the same experience, I think.
And yet, previous incarnations of Sabian, I've run fine. I've run them for months on end. It's been absolutely fine. But this newest build, it just doesn't want to know.
Well, Silent, let me ask you, you mean if you run Savion before, is it that it is for like people who want to learn Gen 2 or?
I would say, yeah, I'd put Calculate probably a little higher than Savion. Savion just a touch underneath Calculate. I think they're both Gen 2 with training wheels, put it that way.
Mhm.
It's a good introduction to Gen 2 because you have the safety net of a package manager, a GUI package manager, and you can get down and dirty with Portage if you really want to go down that road.
The thing I preferred about Calculate is it gave you the NVIDIA installation out of the box.
Yes, it does, yeah.
So you haven't got to go through that hassle. So you can then get into Portage. During the update, I will say it was a lot slower at doing the updates than Calculate.
I'm not sure if that's the package manager itself or the repos themselves, the bandwidth they've got available to them.
Yeah, as I say, I don't know. I didn't get a chance to play with it as much, and I didn't get a chance to try all those little surge commands that he taught me on Calculate, how to get OBS and all the rest of it running. So maybe when they bring out another ISO, I might give it another try.
And that was the KDE edition I tried.
Yeah, I tried KDE and then I tried GNOME just to see what they do with GNOME. But again, got through the install, nothing happened from there.
Yeah, same.
All right. Well, thanks very much indeed for that. Thomas, did you get to try Sabion in your VM?
I got it installed, but beyond that, I got distracted with a bunch of programming this week, so I didn't really get to try it out all that much. It did install, though. It took forever and a day, but it did install. So,
There's a positive.
Right.
yeah. Which it probably helped that since it wasn't a VM, it didn't have to deal with my NVIDIA goodness. So, yeah.
All right. Well, thanks very much, Dee, for that. So, Mr. Positive, come on, bring it back. What have you got to say about it for us?
Well, a lot of good things. I think Sebian is probably one of my favorite non-RPM based. Actually,
Nate, did your mic switch? Did your mic switch to the other one? Because it sounds different than when you started. Sounds like the original one. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Oh no, you're fine. How about this? Is that better?
You just need to be a little bit louder. Now.
Yeah, it's better sounding. Just needs to be a little louder.
Better?
Yes.
All right, we're good.
Yeah.
Tip top. All right. Awesome. So the Sebian I thought was great. So I was a little like when I saw that it was Gen 2, I'm like, boy. Haven't done Gen 2 before. But the installation was just as easy as so many other Linux distributions. I think it uses the same installer that I think Gecko Linux uses. I forget what it's called. Maybe
Calamares.
The Silent OS also use that same installer. I can't remember.
Yeah, Calamares.
Okay, I like it. I think it's a great installer. And so yeah, easy to use. I like that. Easy to install. So I used Plasma because Plasma is kind of my jam dog, and I thought it was a great implementation of Plasma. The only thing I didn't like was they used the application launcher instead of the application menu. Easy switch, and also they used the light theme instead of the dark Plasma theme. Also easy switch, not a big deal. They had this application called Tomahawk installed as a media player. It didn't really respect the dark theme, so not a fan of the white background there. But actually, what I will give a big attaboy to with Sebian is they actually have the firewall enabled by default. I know there's some people that say, "Oh, well, you're behind your router. You don't really need a firewall on your computer," and I think that's terribly dumb, actually. So all those distributions, Ubuntu, that don't have a firewall enabled by default, bad on you, because some people actually leave their homes with their computers and use it in hotels and everything else. So I think having a firewall enabled by default that forces you to open things up as you want, I think that's a better way to go. One of the features I really liked about Sebian is they had a menu items in there for doing like getting involved. So like for if you need help, when you file a bug report, want to donate, get involved. It actually it's a menu click away, so you don't actually have to bookmark it or anything else. It's right there in a menu. It just opens up the web web page, Firefox, which is also good. I use Firefox.
You mean it's a shortcut to where you actually need to go? to get things
Yeah.
done.
Yeah, just in the menu, it's great, and I thought it was really well done.
Some other people should take note of that.
Yes, they should. I think that a lot of distributions should do that. That's seriously. Also, the I didn't really have any issues with the it being like the updater being slow. I mean, yeah, sure, it wasn't as fast as apt or zipper, but I mean, it wasn't like horrifically slow. What I did like about it though is it had kind of a tongue in cheek, which reminded me of Linux of old. So, like it says, repositories updated successfully with a single responsive, okay, thanks. Instead of just being okay. Everything was just kind of like lighthearted and fun.
Mm.
There are 89 updates. What do you want to do? You had like update, show, ignore, seriously ignore. I don't know what the difference between ignore and seriously ignore was, but it made me laugh, and I really like that. It's 4 notices from the repositories with the options let me see, stop annoying me, and close. And it's like, that's fun. That's how Linux should be. It should be fun, and I think they really captured the fun. I also liked how they embedded the terminal display of like when things updated, much like MX Linux does with their updater, and I'm sure some others too. But I appreciate that, and I think that every graphic tool should have that terminal in there with that very harsh terminal look, because we're having fun, but there's some seriousness going on. So what I didn't like about it, these are nitnoid issues. So I rebooted it several times because I was testing things, and I didn't close the welcome window, and so I had multiple welcome windows start opening up. Not a big deal, not even worth a bug report. And also the default partitioning, I'm not a fan of single partition. I know people say, oh, that's a better way to do it, you don't have wasted space, but I just don't think it's safe. But outside, I think everyone should try Sebian. I think it's one of the best distributions I've ever used, and I think that it's no, I do like Silent though. Silent OS, that was great, but this is actually right up there with Silent for me as far as like if I were to go non RPM based, I would go this over Debian based anytime. So
Wow, big praise.
yeah, really, yeah, it's really, I really liked it. It's really pretty great.
All right, Mr. Positive, yeah, that's what I like. Frank, what's happening, brother?
Hey, how are you? I did not. I downloaded it, but I had a few other installations that I worked on this week. I did enough installations, and then I had some other crazy project that I was doing in my free time, so I didn't do it. Sorry.
You were a busy guy this week, and that's okay. Barbara.
Okay, I had downloaded, but I didn't get a chance to install it on anything or even just run the live USB. I ended up spending Thursday and Friday playing with a clean install of Ubuntu Mate 1904. That was a fun time.
Very nice.
Not. It had a problem with
what?
I had multiple drives.
Why did it? What problems did you have?
Oh, didn't you see what I posted?
No, I didn't. I didn't see it.
What happened?
4.5 pages. It was quite fun reading.
Really?
Yeah, it was long, wasn't it? Yeah. So I apologize for that. I tried to be as succinct as I could, and it didn't work. But anyway, what happened was, and now this same machine I had installed 1810 on with 3 drives, no problem. It saw them, put them all in the right places, how I specified them. For 1904, what I did was I figured I would wait until I had, I got a 2 terabyte hybrid drive just for like extra data backup, and the mSATA card I went from 500 to 500 gigabytes to 1 terabyte. And of course, the one that I use for home stayed the same. It's an SSD. It's 1 terabyte, works fine. So I thought, okay, no problem. I just put the installed it, and then it wouldn't even mount. It wouldn't even tell me that I had 2 other drives sitting there. So it turned out that it was when I went into the, the FS tab, when I went in there, I saw it said something about, well, the USB, the removable USB was on SDB, I think, and yet it was actually on SDD. when I ran the update. It was all messed up. So I went in and I fixed it, and now it runs perfectly.
Nice.
Can I just, like I told Barbara when she filed a bug report, I tested many configurations. I did not test a 3-drive configuration.
Leave it to me.
Why
sorry.
didn't you, Frank? Why didn't you see ahead that you needed to test
Because
a 3-drive configuration?
I didn't get upset about it. It just took me a while to figure it out. And, I installed it a couple of times. And finally, what I ended up doing, which really worked the best, was I went in, I used Gparted separately to set up each of the drives and the partitions and everything, format everything that needed to be formatted, the 2 new drives. And then I installed it and at least kind of saw them. And then I had to go in and play with the with FS Tab. And once I did that, it was fine. It's been running perfectly ever since.
All right. Well, we'll probably get into the Ubuntu's then, our regular discussion.
Yes.
But
I have a couple other things to discuss on that one.
Good. That's good. But first, we have to talk to the man that almost got himself banned for having family members talk about Windows in the Telegram group. Colin, what's going on?
Well, Rocco, I think there's another member of PCTLC on the BDLL Telegram group. Daughter's learning to code, so she needed some help, and I pointed her in the direction of some people within the group. So hopefully she can sort that out, because she's at her wit's end and she's ready to quit. So,
well, we can't have that, dude. She got to keep going.
She can't give up. No,
that's right. So I'm hoping 22. So I'm hoping,
no way she should give up. She should not give up.
I want to spark her interest again, so hopefully that can help her out.
Yeah.
So Sabion, I have mixed things, the way things happen for me. It's Toshiba laptop with the NVIDIA. Didn't want to boot up at all, but there is a safe mode when starting up with Sabion, and that booted in with safe mode. That was after the fact, because I put it on the desktop with an AMD. But I went a little bit further with that and tried putting in the the NVIDIA dot mode set and the Nouveau dot mode set. And when I put the NVIDIA one in, it came up with a Nouveau error on startup. That was with the NVIDIA laptop. So for some reason, I'd have to think that there's an issue with the Nouveau driver, which I've never seen before. That's a first for me. So I took it over to the desktop and installed it on that, and that installed really well. Had no issues. Followed the wiki, the first steps, what to do. What I found interesting was they said that don't use sudo, which was quite interesting. So I did the SU and password, of course, you're running as root. And I followed all those commands on the startup page, and they went through really well. I was just interested in this sudo thing. It had me intrigued. So I installed some packages with sudo EQUO, and that worked. And then I tried also with the SU running as root, and that also worked. That's after the fact. So I don't know if it's just the main setup that they're saying not to use sudo. I'm not sure what's going on there. But also Rego installer. I don't know if anyone tried that. It's like a half sort of graphical installer. It's like a Synaptic sort of thing, but a slightly more graphical. And that worked really well. My biggest issue was trying to install Flatpak support, and boy, I spent quite a few hours on that. And I wouldn't make a coder, that's for sure. It was telling me to point to a repository. I had no idea which repository to point to, and I just got completely lost. But I'm sure there's a way of working it out. I might even try putting that up as a video and see if I can get Serge to point me in the right direction, because I'm sure he'll be watching some of these. I don't know. He didn't comment on the video I had installing Sabion, so maybe he doesn't like Sabion because it doesn't do true Gentoo. I don't know. But,
he doesn't like Sabion.
He does. That's probably why he's made no comments. Okay.
Yeah. He's a calculate person or pure Gentoo.
Okay. I can see it is Gentoo with training wheels. I tried installing Zoom, and that was the reason why I was trying to put the Flatpak support in, but I had to download the tar and just make a launcher with that. So, and that was the same with Telegram. So, I'm not running it today. I just wanted to keep it's a fresh install again. I think I've installed it 3 times. So 3 times on the AMD, the install's gone flawlessly. So there's no issues there. I might even try the laptop again and see if I can. I think I may have the same problems as Silent and Zeb. I think because it's
Colin,
NVIDIA. It's
Colin,
Optimus.
for what it's worth, Zoom is actually one of the packages I installed from the community repo. So if you look at the wiki and look for the one, or not the wiki, the welcome screen, there's actually instructions on how to do the community repository. If you go on there and you search for Zoom, it'll show you the package. If you click on it, then it actually gives you exact instructions on how to set up the repo. So I'm just, if you reinstall it somewhere else instead of maybe trying the Flatpak variety, try doing that community repo.
No, I'm at a fresh install stage at the moment. So so I might even try looking at that. So that's what you're saying. That's a little bit like Fedora, isn't it? Like you said.
Exactly.
Okay, because I haven't even looked at. I don't know if you have to install codecs and all that. Media codecs. There's got to be a way of doing that, or does that come by default in Sabian? I'm not sure. I didn't even look at that, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a good question. I didn't try to play any kind of.
No, either did I. So I'm not sure if there's codecs that need to be installed or it comes by default with codecs. I'm not really sure about that. So
you probably have to manually compile any optional dependencies like that.
Right. Okay. Is that like you sit down with a 6-pack and watch it work, or that work?
Pretty much?
No, not even. You just walk away and let it go. There's no point sitting there.
All right. So my experience was sort of, a little bit dumbfounded on the laptop, but there are some issues, obviously, with the my Optimus NVIDIA. But my experience on the desktop was quite good, so it was working all right. And I found that packages installed pretty quickly as well. So with the EQUO. So I don't know if EQUO stands for anything, or that's just what they use. I don't know.
Well, I'm sure it has some meaning, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah. No, either do I. So that was my experience.
All right. Dan, another busy guy this week. I don't know why, but
normally game to try just about anything that gets tossed out here, but I didn't get a chance this week, honestly. And so,
yeah. All good, brother. Paul, did you get a chance to try it?
Yeah, I did try it. It took me a while to get it installed, but I couldn't get it to go UFI. I had to do MBR. But then I got it up and working, but try to get the NVIDIA drivers on there, forget it. No go. And without NVIDIA, it wouldn't do OBS. So next.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Ben.
I did get it installed. Like Paul just said, I couldn't get it to boot into UEFI. So I did install it legacy mode on my spare laptop here. And I bumbled around in it for a bit during a recording. Posted it on my YouTube channel a couple minutes ago because I was struggling to get SSH working on it to pull the video onto this laptop to upload it. One thing I noticed while I was fumbling around, I didn't notice this the first time around, is that it did in fact have a graphical package manager. The first time around, I didn't see it. I was looking for GNOME Software Center, and I couldn't find it anywhere. It was in I tried the version I tried was Sabayon, the GNOME edition, and I went down to other, and there it was. It was called and I forget the name of it until
Rigo?
Regal. Yep, that's it. Rigal, whatever it's called. And I didn't like what that did to my theme. I have a dark theme on it, and it looked like in the background it's like this white border all around it. And whenever I clicked on a package to find more information, it would go completely white, and it was like, okay, I don't like this. Use the command line to install most of my programs. I tested a few things out in the GUI just to see if it worked. It installed things fine. It's just the way it looks. I can't use something like that because it annoys me. It seemed pretty bland. It was very vanilla GNOME. But I mean, there was nothing on there that really excited me like other distros would. It was just kind of meh. All right, it's Gen 2
Yep.
with a extra package manager.
All right, then. Well, thanks very much indeed for that, Steve. Welcome to the stream. And did you try Sabian? You're
Yes, I
very,
did.
very quiet, my friend.
Hmm?
You're very
Right.
quiet.
Let's see. Volume's up. That sound better, or
Yeah, it sounds a little better.
I got it up? Let's see.
Bring your mic up, Steve.
It's doable.
Yeah, I am. There we go. How's that?
Yeah, that'll work.
Okay. I had no problems installing it. I went with the XFCE. It did start. I was installing it while I was listening to Colin's video, and it did seem to be slow at first. Kind of reminded me of Silence, Salient, where it took forever in the beginning, and all of a sudden I blinked and it was done. Had no problems booting in, and I don't think I went with the NVIDIA drivers first because the little laptop that I put it on has an NVIDIA card in it. But I had no problem booting in. It was, decently set up. I like the welcome screen. And I followed Colin's suggestion and went through the wiki and went through all those commands. What did I do? Then I attempted, and I didn't look at it as a newbie type thing like I did with Fedora. I'm like, okay, I can do this, right? And I had to find the package manager. It's named Rigio or something. That's kind of an odd name. But I installed Chromium on there through it. I installed Simple Screen Recorder, which I haven't used yet. And then I installed the Whistler menu because I don't like that stock XFCE application menu. I installed Weather. They all went pretty quick. The only problem I had, and it might be because I'm using Chromium, was I tried to get it, to Zoom. I wanted it to be on the laptop while I did it, and Zoom wouldn't load. So I threw on the old standby and got on. But otherwise, it wasn't. I've had no issues so far. I thought the panels, and they, for me, the way they had the panel at the top and the bottom is almost the way that I do it. Just a little bit of tweaking here and there. But yeah, I have no problems. I don't know what
Cool.
more to say.
Nice. So, Big Pod, talking about problems. You couldn't get out of Windows. You're muted, my friend. Your mic's not working.
Yeah, I was working. Had work to do on. I was doing some work for school and couldn't do it on Linux, and that was a mess in its own itself. And otherwise, I tried Sebian, and the package manager Equa. It is super slow, and for me, it wasn't the repos that were super slow. It was after the downloads, it was like so slow. I actually at one time just wanted to stop it with just 68 packages, and it took probably more than an hour.
Ouch.
I don't know.
What sort of system are you running on spec wise?
4-core 8-thread i5 for laptops. 8th generation NVIDIA GPU. It's like 16 gigs of RAM. It's actually a really good system, but Equa was always problematic for me. At least on every system I tried it, the speed of it was bad.
wonder if it was internet connection, because I had 89 packages, but they installed pretty quick.
What is it called? The download from repos was as fast as normal. It was how much is my internet speed can go. It was after that took a lot of time. The unpacking, cleaning, installing, that stuff.
Yeah,
So
it's definitely not as fast as, I don't know what you usually run pod, but yeah, I mean, I thought it was more like DNF, like there's sort of a methodical approach. It's showing you like downloading, extracting. It's like a lot of different steps, whereas it feels like apt and Pacman and those types of approaches are just much faster for whatever reason.
I did like the way that it did that, though, Eric, because you then learn the intricacies of what's going on in the background. You might not necessarily understand it all, but yeah, like you, sometimes apps and Pac-Man just sort of goes. But this was, and they were doing it in different colors, and you could follow what color was talking about what section. So yeah, if you wanted to learn it, I thought that was really, really good. The big question, you're gone.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's what I like about it.
I guess the one question I've got about the whole Gen 2 thing is, in today's society of really fast i7, i9 computers and all these high-end graphics cards, do you really need to spend a week building and compiling your computer to your system? Do you get the benefits anymore speed-wise?
as far as I have read, what the guy, I don't know his name, the Phoronix guy, that there isn't like any the really performance plus that you would see. Like it's maybe a % or two performance increase if you actually compile it yourself. And it was, there's a couple of distros this way, and it was like a couple of % increase.
But it's the same with Arch. I mean, you can either download the binaries or you can compile from source. It depends on your use case and what you require.
Yeah, and the way that Gentoo is handling stages and compiling and things nowadays, Zeb, to your point, they started stage 3. It used to be a stage 2, really. I mean, stage 1 was like hardcore kernel beginning out. Stage 2 was more the starting point years ago. And they've sort of said, you know what, the benefits you get from stage 2 compile on the local system are negligible. So they give you the stage 3 at this point, where you're essentially just, at that point, you're telling it, what dependencies do I want? How do I hook this into my system? More so than the very low level compiling of years ago. So it's a lot faster than it used to be to do it from scratch, if you want to call it that now. But to your point, I think there are some people that just really, really want to be that specific about how they use their system. Maybe they're not a lot, and maybe that's why Gentoo and Savion and system and these distros aren't as popular as maybe they would have been otherwise. I think you can argue Arch has a lot of those benefits, and that's why people, especially technical people, like Arch in some respects. So, yeah.
It's good.
I think we got a choice. Sorry, Zeb.
No, just saying, it's good that we got the choice. So go on, Cole.
Yeah, I think we've got to remember that. I think the reason we look at these distros, and I know there's a lot of people out there that probably like to be a little bit technical, but these distros all exist for new users and for the ease of use. That's the way I look at them. And if we want to get people to Linux, things have to be easy to install, have to be easy to use, have to, I mean, that's the whole purpose of a lot of this, I believe. But there are people out there who do like to get involved on the technical side a lot more. But
well, Slackware, Slackware will never go away, and it's definitely not an easy system from the standpoint of, if you're used to something like a package manager, it's definitely not as easy as that. But if you like that and you really like the nuts and bolts of your system, then once you go that route, I think a lot of people just sort of see that. It's almost like the discussion between a tiling window manager and a floating window manager. Like, you just kind of get it one way or another.
I don't think Sebian though is really targeting the new user at all though. I mean, it's really targeting more of a intermediate or more advanced user, someone who's really like passionate about really understanding more nuts and bolts or likes the more esoteric Linux distributions. So,
Here, I want to comment something.
Well, I think that then goes back to that new user versus, what do we define as a new user? And I don't think things like Sebian or, Gentoo or any of that is not for somebody who's just, unless they are a real masochist, then just tell them do Linux from scratch and go away. But I think that for somebody who wants to learn more, already has the basics of Linux, I think that something like Gentoo, it serves a really good purpose for that.
Yep.
Here I comment something. I actually talked with one guy who helps with Sebian, and he said that they are targeting somewhat of beginner audience, but as he prefaces also that they are not Gentoo at all. That they are using Gentoo as a base, but that's it. They are doing their own packages, everything themselves. So they shouldn't be coupled in any way with Gentoo. They shouldn't be thrown in the same bin at all. If you're gonna class them into different distros, it's much more likely to class them with something like Ubuntu or Arch Gentoo, because they're not Gentoo at all.
So it's kind of like
And
when
basically this is what I gleaned from talk with him.
So
it's
it's kinda
same
like-
as Arch versus Manjaro, basically the same fight we have.
Right.
But people say Manjaro isn't Arch.
Yeah, I saw that on a Spachi video. He made that very clear like 5 times.
Yeah, but I sort of disagree with that because it's still got the Gentoo base, and like Eric was saying, Eric went into and did the emerge and the portage thing and all that. So it's still got that Gentoo base where you can learn Gentoo if you want to get into the technical side, but they've made it easier for a newer user to install packages and things like that. So you still got the base of Gentoo and being able to use those things if you really want to. So
I think Big Pod was just more talking about the guy was saying that's the way they want to identify it.
Yeah,
they don't really want to
yeah.
be identified as Gentoo.
Yeah, fair enough. That's fair. Yeah.
And to be fair, both of those, Sabion and Calculate, can both be converted to pure Gentoo anyway, quite easily.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Well, it's funny. In using Sabion, it actually made me want to go and try just vanilla Gentoo. So I'm going to, as my takeaway from this experience, I want to go back and actually build a system just to do it. Will I run it long term? Probably not. But just because I enjoyed it all those years ago, and seeing it again just sort of
you do like pain.
He's got the itch.
It's really not that bad. I mean, if
Go for it.
It comes down to your expectation. If you think if you just want to do sudo apt and install something, Gentoo is not for you.
Well, for me, I think the Gentoo, the wiki, the instructions, very clear. I was able to follow them step by step and learn from what I was doing. The only thing is the compile times for me. If it wasn't for the compile times, I could no joke run Gentoo vanilla as my daily driver.
Benjamin, did you go into the make config file under portage and just
Yeah.
Did you? Okay, because you can set your your flags, and depending on your system. I mean, again, it's not instantaneous. It's always going to be a lot of compile time.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is I don't have the time really to maintain a system like that.
Right.
Real life just gets in the way too much for something like that.
I think though that Sebian, is this better now? Does it not sound
Much better, yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, I think Zoom was switching my mic. Anyway.
Cool. That sounds really cool. Feature.
I used to watch Dusk Gregor a lot, and Dusk Gregor used to sit there and say, I compiled this and it didn't work, and I spent many hours, and now I've got to start again. And, I think to myself, nah, no way.
Now, been there, done that. I just like it to install.
But you have-
go.
I remember seeing on the Gentoo wiki, it says, make your, there was a line in the make.conf file where it says like, okay, here's where you can edit how many jobs it's going to do based on how many cores you have, yada, yada. And I did it exactly the way they said it would. Exactly the way they said it could. And after I had it up and running with a fully functional KDE desktop, it wanted a whole day to compile Firefox.
Wow.
Whoa.
So, but
This is
I
not
kind of
much.
think that, how often do you really actually need to update your system? I think that Sebian could be a very sustainable distribution because it is so easy to use. If you, let's say, update it, like once a month or something like that. I don't know if you can, if Gen 2 is stable enough for that. But if, let's say, update it once a month, whatever. I mean, that's not that much time really out of the whole month, especially if you schedule it, properly. Start it
Yeah,
before you go to sleep.
you shouldn't have to
you're good to go.
schedule a system update. You should be able to just do it and it'd be done in 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's Windows
Nah.
talk. That's Windows talk.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we complain about Windows doing updates and takes a long time doing Windows updates, and yet Gen 2 you got to compile a whole day for Firefox. Come on, I mean, there's a huge
Yeah, but that's
difference
a
there
one
in balance.
This is half the reason
And
that
that's
we
just one
use
app.
Linux is because
Yeah,
we
it's
don't
a
have to
one-off
schedule our
thing.
updates.
Well, yeah, but
Just
if
do
you
it.
yeah, but if you compile Firefox for the whole day in Gen 2, you get an application that is like fully is fully
Optimized.
catered to your system.
And I
After
can do
you-
exactly the same thing in Arch, and it takes 5 minutes.
after
Right.
you
Yeah.
but
Thank
my
you,
point is
Silent.
after you update Windows after a day, all you get is telemetry. So I mean, there's kind of a trade-off there.
Which the thing is, with Firefox, this is an exception to the new paradigm of if you compile something on your system, you're not going to get the whole performance benefits because Firefox is so big.
Yeah.
You're going to get those performance benefits because that 1% to 2% for all those files, it piles up. But when you have something that's 5 kilobytes, is it really going to matter? No.
Well, and that's the thing. So if you think about it in terms of when you're compiling this, so that's what Sabian is kind of giving you, right? Instead of it's pre-compiling and giving you the binary, assuming that your system fits some parameter, right?
Right.
But if you think of something like, what if I was a hardware manufacturer and I was developing like an Internet of Things device, like a small device with a very custom, slim system that had to be, exactly what that hardware needed. A system like Gen 2 or source-based distro would be great for that because then I can be extremely specific. I compile it and I deploy it. Not every device needs to compile it on its own. And I think maybe that's where it sort of disconnects is the end user isn't expecting to have to do that compilation on their local system. They're expecting it to be done upstream of them
Right.
today.
And
When I
Exactly.
used Gen 2
Yeah.
12 years ago, that was not necessarily the case in a lot of, you had your core system apps, but if you wanted to run any app that wasn't in the repo, you were building it from source, whether it was on Gen 2 or any other system.
Well, for embedded systems, I think Gen 2 is a solid choice.
Yes.
I mean, for example, here in the UK, the lottery machines, dispensers that are in newsagents, they're running Gen 2 as their
Wow.
core system.
Yep.
Well,
With,
but that's
surprisingly, though, with Windows CE on top of that, which is really strange.
Now, there's a government job for you.
No, don't get me wrong. Like, I don't think it's a bad thing to compile an app yourself. Like, if I had to write an app and redistribute it and it needed to be compiled, I would not compile it myself, depending on the size. If it were below like 5 to 10 megabytes, I would distribute the source code and have the user compile it on the system. But I would have that automated because I don't think any normal user would really like to compile things themselves. And
But then again, that's down to use case, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah, it
I
is.
would rather download the Kden Live source and compile it for my system than rely on someone else's binary.
Well,
Right.
from what I understand, that's a big thing of what Gen 2 is used for, is actually like dedicated machines to like 1 or 2 jobs. It's just like optimized to do those 1 or 2 jobs, and that's
Right.
a very good reason to use it.
Yeah. And also, like, I don't think you should have all your apps or, whatever compiled. Some things, yes, definitely compile them. Things like video editors. If you can do it in a reasonable amount of time, sure, go ahead and compile your web browser. Things like that, things that are going to hit your system hard, go ahead and compile it if you can do it in a reasonable amount of time. Most other things, though, it's fine if you just, do the general binary thing. Because
Ultimately,
look,
build service anyway, like OpenSUSE. They can build for any platform really. So just use their servers and have them do all the hard work, and then you can just pull the binaries down.
I would love to talk about, compiling software for another hour. But
With current
really,
world of CI/CD.
really, I mean, you know, like,
Let's talk about the differences between compiling for RISC-V and
how about
ARM.
we talk about pizza and chicken?
I was about
Or chicken.
Chicken pizza?
Now, is it deep fried chicken?
Chicken.
Always, always.
What's happening?
I'm alive.
You
somehow.
are. What's going on?
Yay.
I got puppies now, so.
Oh.
Nice.
Are they seven? Was seven the final count?
What are you running lately, chicken?
I currently have Ubuntu Mate installed, but obviously that won't last because I'm me, and
It's not elementary. We know.
nah, exactly. But no, it's in great shape. I'm actually really impressed, and I'm running the Mutiny layout quite happily.
And is it
how
on
many drives do you
1904?
have in that machine?
Elementary, you'd never know the difference. Other then it would run better.
Wow. Wow.
Savage.
Shots fired, yeah. So
Yes.
is that the nine?
Out of
Harsh, but
curiosity,
fair.
how many drives on the one that's running Ubuntu Mate? How many drives do you have in that machine?
I've got 6.
Did you have any problems installing it?
No, not at all.
And
It
telling
was
it which
perfect.
drive was what and where you wanted it, right?
It handled it perfectly. Yeah.
It didn't with me. With
Weird.
3 drives.
And is that the 1904 version?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got 4 SATA SSDs, and then I've got 1 normal NVMe SSD, and then I've got a separate controller with another SSD on it.
Okay. I was just curious because I had problems with 3. I solved my problem. But I still had
I
problems.
heard other people had problems with it as well. I just maybe I
You
got
might.
one.
Maybe it doesn't like odd numbers. Who knows?
Maybe.
Maybe.
That's odd.
Yeah. All right. So the Ubuntus have released. A couple people have talked about Mate. Anybody else try any of the other Ubuntus? And how they're working? Yeah.
I tried them all. Yeah.
And what do you think?
It's a solid release, but again, we've got that old NVIDIA problem that keeps rising its ugly head. And I don't know if it's NVIDIA's problem or Ubuntu's problem, but you install NVIDIA, you open up the NVIDIA settings, you make everything the way you want it, and you go file save, and it goes, nah, I'm not going to save it there. So you go, okay, we'll put it in this directory. And it goes, nah, I'm not going to put it there either.
I had the same issue, dude.
I own my home directory. Put it in there. Nah. What are you supposed to do? So every time you reboot the machine, I have to set up my 3 monitors again, put on all that anti-screen tearing stuff. And the one thing I do like, though, but I've not really seen whether or not it works, you can now turn on NSYNC or something, even if your monitor doesn't support it. Just try to see if it can. I don't know what that's all about.
Yeah. I did see the option for that.
But yeah, why can't it save a file? What's so difficult?
I was dumbfounded by it because I opened it, via the terminal with sudo just for that reason, because I figured it was going to give me a hard time, and it still didn't let me save it. And I'm like, that's weird.
Yeah, what is with that? Even with sudo, it doesn't do it.
I don't know, dude.
So you're using the. Sorry, go ahead.
Which desktop environment is it that you're using that it's not saving it?
It didn't matter. It didn't matter.
I was going to say you're not using the setup of the displays from the DE. You're trying to use NVIDIA instead.
NVIDIA settings is what we usually set, because that's where you can set the force composition pipeline and all that stuff.
Okay.
Zap, do you go into when you save it? Do you click save configuration in the NVIDIA servers, and it points to the place you want to save it? Is that what you're trying to save, or do you actually open up the file as root? Because I had intermittent on some, not only Mint, but some of the other distros, where it seems like it doesn't want to save the settings sometimes, and I literally will have to go in and log in as root and go in and actually edit that config file manually.
No, you shouldn't have to do that at all.
You shouldn't.
Since 12, you just, and the thing is as well, sometimes, especially on PEP, it doesn't like the way the config's written. So sudo taught me how to, you save it in the xorg.conf.d directory with a 20 minus nvidia.conf. It even won't do that.
Right.
And it shouldn't be doing that at all. And what I find a lot of as well is when you've got NVIDIA installed and you've got NVIDIA settings, you then go into the normal display settings other than what you get with Plasma, and the whole system will freeze. It won't let you manipulate it through the normal display manager. At least that's what I'm finding on my setup. So
Is that with any of the desktops?
that's on anything other than Kubuntu. Kubuntu is the only one where I can go into the desktop settings or the display settings native to the application, native to the distro, and manipulate my screens. Everyone else at the moment.
Even Mate?
Yeah, even Mate.
Wow.
It just doesn't work. I
Yeah,
don't know
okay.
why, whether it's my video cards on the way out or something. But
No.
yeah.
I thought it was
It's not.
the only problem I was having. Same thing.
I
Yeah.
think just if you just go with Plasma, you're fine. That'll solve most of your
No,
problems.
it doesn't.
That's
I would love to say that it does, but it doesn't.
And to
Is it
answer your
possible-
question, Rocco, I've got, as you saw earlier, Ubuntu Studio, the latest version on here. I've played with it just a little bit over the last couple of days.
Mhm.
The first thing that jumped out to me that they didn't do was, and it's an annoyance to me, and I know I can take care of it, but they don't map the super key to open the menu just with a one click. You always have to, it's a 2-button click to do it, and that drives me nuts.
Yep.
But I love the way it looks. I mean, I love the wallpaper, but I haven't had a lot of time to spend on it. But it does seem really nice from what I've seen already. And again, it's on older hardware right now too, so I'm kind of anxious to put it on the new machine here and see how it performs.
But Joe, isn't the super key mapping, doesn't that come from Ubuntu proper? I mean, because it works with Mate, with the Mate.
Well, I know, and it works on Mint, and it works on most other distros.
So
but
did they undo something with Studio, or?
No, even when I had 1804, it was the same thing there.
Is Studio running XFCE?
Yes,
Yeah.
it does.
That's why it's running the default config for Super,
Oh.
which is yeah.
I'm actually.
That explains it.
But
I'm on
not all,
Ubuntu.
not even there's Peppermint works fine with it, and obviously there's other XFCE. So for whatever reason in Studio, they just don't change that mapping in there.
I think you probably find that something like Ubuntu Studio has got so much else going on for it elsewhere.
Yeah.
Chicken have just said they've just chucked on the basic configs. You now set it up how you want it. By the way, this is the single best distro out there for everything out of the box, multimedia wise. That's what they're concentrating on, not the other stuff, I don't think.
Yeah, it's just, I think though, again, if you're looking at these distros from somebody who's coming to it for the first time and they're used to hitting that button, because I think most people are, I'm not saying everybody is, a lot of people will go over with the mouse too, but if that's the case, they're fine. But if you go to hit that button and nothing happens and you're not used to that, the first thing you think is, okay, what's wrong with it?
I thought the Windows or the super key was mapped in the kernel.
That's what I was thinking.
No, it's part of the DE.
No, it's the DE.
So, Joe, have you tried the Ubuntu Studio installer on a different DE?
No, I have not.
Because that's a new thing this year. This release is they came out with the Ubuntu Studio installer, so you can install it on any one of the standard flavors.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think that
get all the Ubuntu goodness or get all the Studio goodness. Yeah.
Pizza, go ahead.
Well, and I'm not bashing it. I ran Studio for quite some time. I ran 1804, and I absolutely loved it. So I'm not bashing on this at all. It's just that's the one quirk that even with the last distro, for me, I'm just so used to that, and I can fix it. It takes 2 seconds to fix it. But that was the first thing I noticed. But and the wallpaper. The wallpapers are awesome, and I always do load up everything, even though I'll never use it, just to tool around and try it out and compare apples to apples, and
Pizza.
I think that Ubuntu Studio should have been the Studio installer to begin with, because in my opinion, it's just XFCE with a bunch of Xubuntu with a bunch of multimedia stuff added. I'm actually on Xubuntu right now, and just like Joe said, super key doesn't work by default on that too. So, but I think it uses Xubuntu as a base.
Mm-hmm.
Frank?
but not everybody likes XFCE. So I feel like that the Ubuntu Studio the installer should have been what it should have been to begin with.
I just want to say that Ubuntu Studio is not just Ubuntu, and they worked really hard on this release. They had a very big issue with almost losing their status as a flavor of Ubuntu. They worked really hard, and to say that it is just Ubuntu
Wow.
with some stuff on top of it is a disservice to the work that they did.
It does have some theming changes, and it does have the low latency kernel, but you can do most of that on other distros too.
I don't think they use the low latency kernel anymore. Last I
Wait,
heard,
what?
they took whatever changes they were making and those were pulled into the mainline kernel. Which, if you're doing audio editing nowadays, if I'm not mistaken, you don't need the low latency kernel. Low latency kernel is better for things like gaming in some instances, and I think in some instances video editing. There's not a lot of reasons to run a low latency kernel these days.
The basic gist of it is that if you're running a low latency kernel, you will essentially cripple everything that isn't the primary task being handled. So if you're running a system that you want to use more than one thing for, like if you're running multiple applications at once, or you're multitasking, which many editors do, whether it be audio, visual, or image editing, you're gonna essentially be screwed over by a low latency kernel because everything else suffers performance wise.
So you're saying like if you were running a backup program in the background of your regular work, it would suffer?
Yeah, you would notice a pretty significant difference in performance when something like that happens.
They'd probably reverted to real-time scheduling instead, using the real-time audio scheduling.
I can't remember, or I'll see if I can find it. But I remember I read an article about like benchmarks on the normal kernel versus the low latency one for gaming, and actually in some cases you lost frame rate.
Well, that really depends on what's going on. Low latency kernels in gaming will give you more stable frame rates very consistently, in fact. The reason for that is because think about it like this. Let's say you were driving from Washington, D.C. to L.A., and you had two different cars. You had one that would go the entire way at like 60 to 70, and you had another car that would go there at first, like for the first half of the way, like 30 miles an hour. And then the second half of the way, it goes 100 or 200. You know, they might get there at the same time, but you're going to get a much more pleasurable experience in the one that goes this consistent speed the entire time. It's this same kind of thing when you have a low latency kernel.
Yeah.
Because with a generic kernel, sometimes with certain games, if they put a lot of stress in your system, what can happen is the amount of time it takes to render a frame can take longer for certain frames and not quite as long for others.
Yeah.
However, with a low latency kernel, it takes all that and speeds it up. And by doing that, if you're playing a game, say Halo, and there's an explosion, because it takes less time to render that, you're not going to notice that frame dip as much. You're not going to see as much screen tearing. You're not going to see as many artifacts.
I feel like that.
In gaming, you may get a lower frame rate, but it may be a more pleasurable experience. And depending on the game itself, you may get a higher frame rate. It depends on the game specifically. And that's what it comes down to with a lot of gaming benchmarks, is it depends on the game, because the system and the software setup you have are going to change, and the way that the developers that make the game is going to change.
But again, that's down to use case as well. It's very rare you'd find a studio producer, someone who's using low latency kernel for getting down to 1 or 2 milliseconds on their MIDI or audio recording. They're not going to be running games on that system at all. And most studio setups, they're not even connected to the internet, so they're not going to suffer in that same way.
Yeah, and that's why if you're looking at getting a low latency kernel, you really need to know why you need that low latency kernel, and you really need to weigh those pros and cons. For instance, Draugr OS uses a low latency kernel, and the reason for that is because Draugr OS is not meant to be a daily driver. It's meant to be specifically for gaming. If you're gaming with it, you're not going to be doing much else. You're going to be consumed in that game, or using that game. You're going to be consumed with it, and that's that. You're not supposed to use it for anything else. You can if you really want to, but it's not what it's meant for.
But then you have the benefit then of, for example, Feral Interactive's game mode system.
Yes.
Does exactly that temporarily on the host system. It changes those settings temporarily while you're running that task, and then it sets your system back to how it was afterwards.
Right, but if you have a low latency kernel along with Feral Interactive, you may actually get even better performance. And that's actually something I'm testing right now. Will you actually get better performance by using both Feral Interactive and a low latency kernel? Because I use a low latency kernel every single day. And based on what I'm seeing between this low latency kernel and when I was using the generic kernel, I'm not seeing any performance deficit, really. And part of the reason I have found for that is because the low latency kernel I am using, I'm using the Zen kernel, which is not your typical low latency kernel. It's a little bit smarter about its scheduling. So it's a little bit better to use than, a normal low latency kernel or a real-time kernel, which are a completely different beast entirely sometimes.
Just a quick question. Usually I have a 60 hertz monitor. I can't really tell the difference when my frame rate is dipping or going up when it's above 60 FPS. So
because if you have a 60 hertz monitor, if you have something going above that, then it can't render that.
Yeah.
What you have to do is just get an entirely new monitor.
So if your game is running above 60 FPS, do you really need the latency kernel?
If you have a 60 hertz monitor and your game is running above 60 FPS, first off, what you should do is you should turn up your quality settings to bring that those FPS down, because what you're going to have issues with is screen tearing. Because if you have screen tearing, if you have a 60 hertz display and your game is displaying at like 300 frames per second, you're going to get screen tearing because it's pushing frames so fast your screen can't keep up.
Yeah.
However, if you were to push your quality settings up, then what's going to happen is, first off, it's going to look nicer. Second off, because your FPS are coming down, and it's going to match up better with the frequency of your screen. If you're not using something like G-Sync or FreeSync, then what's going to happen is it's going to look better. But if your hardware is not able to push that quality and you don't have G-Sync or FreeSync, you're kind of screwed. So,
Hey, Zeb.
Good luck doing that with something like CSGO, where every single frame matters.
Yeah.
So that you can, okay, so you shoot across the screen and you're getting 120 frames a second. So if you suddenly drop 20 frames a second, it doesn't matter. But if you bumped up your quality and you're sitting there at 60 frames a second and you suddenly drop down to 40 frames a second, you're dead in the game. You've just been shot. So although you can't see it, the higher the frame rate means the better interaction you're going to get with the game.
Yeah, that was about to be my point, because CSGO is my main game, and I do put all my graphics that low just for that, even though I only have a 60 hertz monitor.
Thing is, though, if you have a 60 hertz monitor, it's not going to matter because you're not seeing those frames.
That's not how it works, actually, because you have reference frames in between, and everything that you do physically and interact with the game is part of the feedback loop.
Yeah. So when you have higher frames, that means that when you interact with the game, it's going to be a little bit faster than when you have lower frame rate.
Yeah, you are.
That's why I always use low graphics in CSGO, even though I only get like 500.
Hi, Rocco.
Yeah,
Zeb, you know what I like talking about more than compiling software? Low latency kernels. That's what I love talking about more than compiling software.
Frame rates.
Wow. This is like awesome.
The life of the party.
Hey, think about it like this, though. We wouldn't be having this conversation 2 years ago. We'd be saying, gaming on Linux. Why would you do that? There's no games to run other than what?
Minecraft.
Maybe Minecraft if you can get it to run. Mine test, maybe.
Tux Penguin.
Stella,
Super Tux.
I've been playing the
Super Tux.
Atari 2600 emulator on Linux for, I don't know, 15 years now.
Nice.
I've
That's all
been
the games
playing.
Emulators on Linux are great, especially
Yeah.
if you're emulating another. If you're emulating
Awesome system that have
thing-
zero latency. If you want zero latency, you go for an Atari or Nintendo or Commodore 64. Zero latency.
One thing Linux does struggle with when it comes to emulators is it doesn't have a good GUI that scans through all of your games and downloads box art automatically. You can add in Retro Games 2 Lutris, but then you have to manually add each game and all the artwork and stuff. But Windows has
that
Launchbox
depends.
and
That depends on the that depends on the emulator.
Mhm.
Using Dolphin Emu, the first time you run the game, it pulls out the banner for the game.
No,
Dolphin's
I'm like,
performance is terrible though. Like they have some
Yeah.
serious overhead issues.
Yes.
What, Dolphin Emu?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Dude, I'm getting great. I'm getting like, I am getting frame rates you would get when running the game on a native like Wii when using it on Dolphin Emu.
You know why?
Are you running it
Because
on
I-
a Wii?
You run it on a low latency kernel, Thomas. That's why.
That's what it is.
And I have a dedicated graphics card. That helps too.
I also
Hey,
have a dedicated
hey,
graphics
anybody try the Ubuntu's?
Yeah, I was just about to say.
Yeah, I'd like to circle back to what Frank was saying
Yeah.
about Ubuntu Studio, and they have done a pile of work, and I think you'll see a lot more from them going forward. I think they're starting to get their feet underneath them. So
Yeah, Eric,
I think you'll see some good stuff.
Well, I think in honor of all of the work that everybody has done this week for the 1904 releases, we should try the Ubuntu's.
Yeah, I so far I've tried Ubuntu default with GNOME. I've tried Kubuntu, Xubuntu, and I'm planning on trying all of the other ones except for Kylin and Studio.
I am debating on going from 1804 to 1904. I'm not sure if I want to or not, because me and the non-long-term releases, we don't tend to get along very well.
I had tons and tons of issues with 18.10. For me, the GNOME version was actually unusable for me. 1804 actually ran better on GNOME, despite the fact that 18.10 had the upgrade to GNOME 3.30. But 1904 just fixed all of my issues with 1804. Or I mean 18.10.
Cool.
Yeah, and I've been using 1904 since Thursday evening, and except for the one issue that I had, it's been rock solid.
But that was an install issue, and
Right, it was an install. It wasn't the actual operating system.
Right.
That's running perfectly, and I'm using Mate.
The only issue I have ever had with 1804 that was not something to do with me was when I was actually going to install it on the system. 1804 was having huge issues with my NVMe drive and my graphics card. So what I had to do was install 1604, then manually upgrade to 1804 just to get it running on here. After
That's
I did
weird. So, quick question then on the 1904s. Who has noticed that it now actually installs NVIDIA straight out of the box?
Yes.
Yes.
I've noticed that.
Yes, that was actually one of the first things I noticed, because the first thing I did when I booted into normal Ubuntu was I went to install drivers, and I was happy when I realized that they were all pre-installed.
Yeah.
Now,
the
does
only
it install the
difficulty
latest
is they didn't explain it well enough. So if you are a gamer, you don't want to be sitting there on 390.
Right.
So you have to not tick that box and then do the usual add to PPA, manually install it yourself, and you can get 418. If you just let it do it out of the box, you'll get 390.
but at least it'll work. You'll have the NVIDIA drivers,
Yeah. So if you're like
on the
a
install.
casual gamer, it won't be too big of a deal.
So it installs the 390. It doesn't install 418.
No,
so it installs
390.
It gave me
Are 418 even available in like the normal?
Yeah. If you
it is.
use, I've tested it. All right. So
Okay,
Yeah,
'cause
but can't you go into additional drivers?
Yeah, it does install 418. I just checked.
yeah, Lubuntu, I did test it. We don't have that in our installer. We're working on that. But when you install it after you boot, if you use the Ubuntu drivers, it installed 418.
Yeah, 418 if you do the Ubuntu drivers, but I'm talking about
Right.
during the install process. You know, you get the 2 boxes, download your updates and
Right.
download all the other bits and pieces.
So
Well,
it's
for once that download the other bits and pieces puts NVIDIA drivers straight into the system, but it's
Yeah,
only 390.
No,
Well,
that's what I
good to
did.
know.
I'm on 318.
Hold
I
on.
did it through the installer. So
Hold on.
What they
One
should do
person
is
at a time. What were you going to say, Dan?
No, that's interesting. I didn't test it on the regular Ubuntu, installer using Ubiquity. And so I find it weird that it installs a different version than what the GUI or the command line is doing.
Now, what do you have to add the PPA in order to get to 418?
Nope.
No.
I just did Ubuntu drivers,
it
auto
might be.
install, and it installed 418.
You're saying you're saying you check the box in the installer to install the drivers, right?
Not me. No, no.
Okay.
It did the Novu drivers, but once I booted, I did Ubuntu drivers, auto install, and it did 418.
That's weird because I tested Ubuntu and Kubuntu, and they both installed 418 from the installer. I didn't do anything.
That's what it did for me. And
I think it's a late edition.
It did install. It installed NVIDIA drivers on Ubuntu and Kubuntu, but I can't remember what version those two installed. I think it should be the same though, because on
I'll have to double
Ubuntu.
check then. Maybe I was just using an earlier daily driver where they hadn't.
Yeah. Zeb, I'll tell you that it would not install on my laptop up until 2 days before.
That was really late edition. Really late.
Very late. Yep.
But if you're running an AMD card, let's say, and now we know AMD is baked into the kernel too, and this wants to do that install, and you're doing the extras there or whatever, does it still throw NVIDIA in there? And then you gotta go
No.
tell it what
No, of
drivers
course
to
not,
use?
Joe, because you haven't got an NVIDIA card. So why would
It checks to see if you've got the NVIDIA card. If you do, then it'll install it. If you
Okay, well, that's what I'm asking. I mean,
Yeah.
I know it sounds like a dumb question, but I just
No, because the machine that I installed 1904 on has an AMD card, and it did not install any of the NVIDIA drivers.
okay. So it'll recognize and just grab the drivers that you need.
Mhm.
I got you.
Basically, just a check.
Wow, Linux is smarter than people give it credit for.
My assumption is that in the background it's doing the.
Yeah, it's doing the same thing. It's doing the Ubuntu drivers auto install bit as part of the installer, and it the tail end. So then it just puts the drivers right in there for you.
Yeah, and that's every time I'd go to test, it wouldn't work for me. And if you remember last week, I'd mentioned it, and Martin and some others had said, get in touch with us, and I did, and then it just magically worked after a few days. So that just at the very end there, they must have tweaked something, and it does work. Unfortunately, I had other issues with Kubuntu, so I actually went back to 18.10 for now. But
what other issues did you have?
I have a list, Rocco.
There you go. Right. I would love to talk about that more than a low latency kernel.
Yeah. If anyone's running Kubuntu 1904, they can try these and see if it's just me, but I've tried it on multiple systems. So GTK apps look weird.
Yes, I had that issue on GIMP.
GIMP, FileZilla, any of the GTK apps that I normally use, this theming is wrong. Something is the engine's not right. And I checked to see the Breeze GTK is installed, and so something is not right there.
And what's annoying is I didn't catch that bug until after my review of it. If I caught that bug before I did my review, that would have been like the main thing I talked about.
Well, what's interesting is so I've been testing all along, right? And I've just been using Nouveau because NVIDIA wasn't working. That was not a problem up until recently. So something changed late in the game. And I'm sure they'll fix it, but it's not a showstopper. You can still use the app, but it just looks really bad.
What's funny is I sort of thought it was my own fault because I didn't see it. It wasn't showing up before, like it wasn't showing up for the first day I used Kubuntu, but then the second day it did show up. So I thought it was just user error.
Gotcha.
But now you're having
There's little things like double clicking the title bar to maximize windows. It wasn't working. It wanted to move the window, and I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Like,
oh, I didn't have that issue.
So then I went and I reset. You can uncheck it and then check it again for that to work, and then it fixed itself. Flatpak, they're taking like 2 or 3 minutes to load.
Wow.
Wow,
I don't know what it is, but I tried it. That's 3 different installs I've tried that on, and it does it every single time for Kdenlive, for Telegram Desktop, for like 3 or 4 different ones that I've tried. And also I've noticed that Dolphin sometimes takes 10 seconds or so to load.
Eric, is that the Flatpaks, is that initial load or is that every time? Because I know Flatpaks are slow
Every
to
time.
out, not 2 or 3 minutes.
No, Snap. You're thinking of Snaps. Snaps used to be really slow, and they fixed that.
Flatpaks too, though, because I use Flatpaks, and the initial load takes a few extra seconds, but then once you get
No,
it,
this is minutes, literally minutes. It's literally 3-4 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had the
And
same.
it's every one. It's not. It's like, so if I open Telegram Desktop, it took 3 minutes, and then I opened Kdenlive, it took 3 minutes.
Wow.
And I mean, not exactly 3 minutes, but you know, it's roughly. And if I check the kernel, like the logs, system logs, you can actually, I can look and see, okay, I clicked it here. So there's some troubleshooting. I've no doubt they're going to fix it and figure it out. But for right now, it just was killing my workflow, so I had to go back to 18.
That's actually that's because you should be using KDE as a snap, apparently.
That's my mistake. Okay, I didn't understand.
One thing I really like about Kubuntu is I'm not a huge fan of the KDE desktop for a minor bug that I could fix easily, but that still turns me away from it. But one thing I really do like is the GNOME Software Center just tries and pushes snaps a lot, and I really do not like snaps, so I just stay away from the GNOME Software Center. However,
well, here's another
Discover actually just uses snaps as a backup, and by default, when you install something, it installs it off the repo, and then if the program you want isn't on the repo, then it uses snaps. And I really like that approach, and I think the GNOME Software Center should use that approach.
So when that does that with the
I don't want
GNOME
to monopolize too
software-
much.
Hang on, peeps. Go on, Dolphin.
Oh, for a second there, I thought no one could hear me. So when with the GNOME Software Center, does it when there's a snap and a deb or whatever, how does it present that? Does it just say install, or does it?
It just shows up twice. It just shows up twice, and you have to click on one of them and then scroll down to the bottom to check the source. And then then if it's a snap, then I have to go back and get the real one. It's annoying.
Yeah, and it will put the snap at the top of the list every single time.
Yeah, it will put the. Oh, really?
So there's no differentiator in the when you're viewing it outside, like in the Software Center before you click on it. There's nothing to say that this is the snap and this is a Flatpak and this is a regular PPA version.
Yeah,
I thought there was actually a little like gray icon that says snap next to an app or something like that in GNOME Software Center.
Not in Ubuntu. I sort of vaguely remember Arch having something like that, but it's not in Ubuntu.
Okay, so that must be just imagining things.
I think they kind of mask it. They're trying to integrate snaps in as closely as possible as normal system components. And the issue that they're creating thereof is that when you do that and something happens and something goes wrong, you don't know that, okay, the way to fix it is not the normal way because it's a snap.
Yeah,
so they're fixing it with the wrong tools.
That's why I really have been trying to stay away from Ubuntu. That's why I'm going towards some of the Arch releases.
Well, I noticed Linux Mint's got a Flatpak category in their software center, which is quite nice. And I'd hope that everyone else goes that way. For snaps and Flatpaks would probably make it a little bit easier to define what you're actually installing.
So Colin, if you search for something in the Linux Mint Software Center, does it show both versions? Or
no, there's just I'm not actually sure about that.
I was on Mint just before I started using the Ubuntu's. It shows up twice. However, the one that is a Flatpak has like parentheses FlatHub next to it, so you know.
Yes,
that's
right.
That's what it should be like in every Software Center.
That's what. I agree with that, and that's so. And by when I said Ubuntu base, or when I said Ubuntu's, I meant the official flavors. Most of the respins are trying to go away from the snaps.
All right. So we still didn't pick a distro to try. And I know that what we normally do is we will normally say, let's try an Ubuntu, and everybody picks their flavor. But I think we should probably try each one separately.
I disagree.
Kylan first.
Yeah, Thailand.
Isn't it chillin'?
I mean,
thought it was
what I'm
chillin'.
saying is the reason I
I don't know.
suggest
I don't speak Chinese.
the reason I suggest we try them separately is because each of them have their own teams working on them. Each of them are putting in a ton of work to put their version, their flavor, and make it the best it can be. And when one of us tries this or one of us tries that, we kind of get a bland overall view of Ubuntu rather than specifically what did Ubuntu do for this release, or specifically what did Ubuntu do for this release.
Well, shall we, in honor of Dan and Wendy Hill and our friend whose name that escapes me at the moment, who's normally on assignment, should we go for Ubuntu this week?
I second that because obviously they've made a lot of changes going from LXDE to LXQT, and I think it was like the beta that you guys did in September, was it? Right before 1810, and they've made a lot of changes and adjustments and evolved a lot. So I think it would be fair and good to give 1904 Ubuntu a run.
Cool.
And Rocco, I agree with you. And when you talk about instead of picking all the, one picks Studio, one picks Mate, it's one thing if you've got a distro that has multiple different DEs with it.
Right.
That's one, but to pick different distros.
Yeah, like if you're going for Fedora 30, say, it's the Fedora team working on different DE flavors, but this is different. This is specific teams working on specific flavors. So I think it's definitely a good idea to try each one. Although Aris made the comment that it's going to be a big commitment to try each one because it's going to be a few weeks. But I do think it's worth it. I think there's a big effort in the community with the devs to put all this out there for us, so I think it's worth making the commitment to try each one.
Do you want to try the not official version and stick to the smaller teams?
Well, I think that's an option for another week. I'm perfectly fine with trying Ubuntu this week. But yeah, I mean, at the end of it, I'm perfectly fine with trying the non-official flavors.
My take on this is this gives me a chance to try something I haven't tried, and I haven't really even looked at LXQT, so I think that would be kind of neat for what that's worth.
All right.
I mean, has anyone here really spent a lot of time with LXQT? I mean, it's pretty new. It's kind of a neat thing to see.
I guess I have.
And Dan has kind of, sort of.
Well, yeah,
but I don't count.
My only wish with LXQT, I wish it had a menu sort of like the Whisker menu, more Windows 7.
Good feedback. Let's get all that together then.
Well, I've tinkered with LXQT on Arch a few times here and there, and whenever I run Plasma, I always install PCMan FM Qt as a GUI file manager that can access root that does not look like a foreign application on Plasma because it's based on Qt. It conforms to your Plasma themes.
I've tried Ubuntu beta already, so and I'm happy to report that one of my issues has been solved, which was the networking issue. So that's really great. So, but that's only the beta. So yeah, I'd love to download the official release and give it a go. I reckon.
I've used LXQT twice, and the first time I tried it on Void Linux. And it was my first time using Void, and I couldn't figure out how to install stuff with XBPS. So the second time I tried it on Ubuntu 18.10. I like how it's like old school, but with like a taste of modern to it. Like it has like a Windows 95 type menu, but it also has a search bar, stuff like that. I like.
When you say old school, what do you mean by that?
Like, sort of instead of having like a Windows 7 type menu, it has like a menu that is just a list of applications, sort of like Windows 95. Stuff like that.
Yep.
It means everything he likes about LXQt is everything everybody hates about XFCE. Which I will give a shout out to Sean and the Ubuntu guys, because there's still incremental improvements in XFCE. So no harm, no foul checking it out. There's a lot of little 4.13s in there.
Yeah, right.
My
in the,
only issue with
Ubuntu release.
my only issue with XFCE is the screen tearing.
Yeah, but
Could
that's
use
easily
screen
fixed.
My only issue with XFCE is the non-high DPI support. Other than that, I think it's awesome.
But that's coming.
It's
Really,
coming.
really close.
It's going to be here at some point, but
The other thing I wish both LXQT and XFCE did have, I wish I had an icon-only task manager that supports pinned apps. So you can get icon-only task managers, but you can't pin any apps, which means you have to have a separate area in your panel for pinned apps, which means that pinned apps, when they're open, they showed up twice, once as a pinned app and once as open.
This is where Budgie and Plasma shine.
That's why I like Budgie.
I think Budgie falls short in the menu area. Just
Remember
saying.
when it fell very short in the menu area?
Just saying.
It's well, actually, one thing I'd like to know from people is I've tried Ubuntu 1904 proper, Ubuntu GNOME. That's really traveling really nice. The GNOME 3.32 to me is a really, really nice release. I think it really seems to be nice and fluid and smooth. The only thing is when you bring up the menu, it doesn't have the full name of applications. Now, it's been a bit of a gripe of mine for a while. Why is that? Can anyone explain that to me? Why the full names don't come up on the applications?
It would have to be something that's logical for us to be able to explain it, but it's completely bonkers, so none of us would be able to tell you.
I think
Maybe the label size.
I used to hate GNOME, but it's starting to grow on me. As long as you're willing to use a bunch of extensions, it's starting to grow on me.
That's why it's a failure to launch for me. I will not do extensions. That's like I don't want to play extensions roulette.
Well, that's the thing, though. Yeah, but that's the thing. Most of like GNOME itself would have you not use extensions as well. So it's kind of like a tough thing because anybody that would want to use GNOME, okay, not I shouldn't say anybody. Most people that are used to other DEs like XFCE or ADE that can customize things would want to use extensions. Except the GNOME team doesn't really want you to use extensions, so it kind of makes it difficult.
The thing I don't like about GNOME, I'm fine with them removing features as long as they don't remove extensions, because most features they remove you can get back with extensions. However, what I really don't like is a lot of desktops are based on GNOME, which means some changes they make to not the desktop itself, but apps tied to the desktop can also change up the way other desktops function. And the example I'm going to use for this is on Arch Linux, everything's bleeding edge, so it has the latest version of Nautilus. However, the latest version of Nautilus does not support desktop icons, and Budgie depends on Nautilus to use desktop icons, which means that Budgie doesn't work properly with desktop icons.
Well, that's the one extension that I didn't need them to add back because I don't use desktop icons.
Yeah,
and they added it.
I don't use them either on my laptop, but on my desktop I use them a lot.
I would argue that is not a GNOME problem, though, considering it's not their choice for Budgie to use Nautilus. Like they essentially chose their poison there. Like
yeah.
The
use whatever. They could use Nemo or Kaha.
Well, I think that it's something that they should. It's kind of like a double-edged sword because no, it's not their fault that Budgie uses that, but I think in their position as one of the main DEs out there, they have to realize that people are going to follow them and use it. It's kind of like a middle road they should take, where they should at least be mindful of the fact that other DEs are taking their parts of their.
Well, if you look at the reasons
I have
why
to
it was
disagree.
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, ultimately, it's GNOME's project. I mean, if it's their, they're the developers, they're the ones creating it. I mean, we can disagree all day with, like I said, when we were talking about, I think it was Fedora, or not Fedora. It was something about GNOME 3.32, and we were talking about that. if they're really going to depreciate that top menu items, and there's nobody working on it, then I mean that's just not going to be a DE that I will consider using, because, like I said, you couldn't close Discord. You had to manually go into the task manager and kill it.
Yeah.
But I mean, if that's what GNOME wants to do, then I don't know why I don't know why they would necessarily let that affect what they're trying to do, because maybe that's part of some plan. I don't know. I'm not saying it is. Just saying.
Well, I liken it to, say, Windows. Okay, Windows is a operating system where they do what they want to do, and they make decisions the way they want to make decisions. But they also have to be mindful of the fact that their decisions affect people that. At the end of the day, it's their operating system. They can do whatever they want with it, but at the end of the day, people are still affected by that, by every small decision that they make. And that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying they should base every decision they make on people following them. I'm just saying that they should be mindful of it as well, because of the position they play.
It seems that they don't want to listen to their followers. I mean, at least, as suggestions, where they just killing stuff to kill stuff. I don't get it.
Well, I don't think they're killing stuff. I think they always have a reason. I think they're very bad at communicating that reason, and they're not out front with it. So, they had talked about killing the system tray icons forever, but nobody really knew about it because it was in their internal communications that they use. So it's not like this. It happened suddenly to us out here, but it wasn't a sudden thing. They were talking about it for.
Well, these are two very similar kind of issues. With you see the system tray icons, and you see the issue with Nautilus removing desktop folders. But think about it this way: why would the file manager need to draw the desktop? That should not be a thing. So it's not even a thing. It's just an issue.
It's a programming thing. Every as far as I know, every file manager that around distro does load icons to the desktop,
and it's not
actually even the same on Windows. Explorer.exe. Actually,
that's kind of one of the problems.
Desktop
that's why they removed it. Is because the file manager should not be doing that.
I think in an XFCE, there's a separate daemon that does that.
Yeah, exactly.
Except desktop does it.
I feel like I have the exact same point as Rocco. I feel like GNOME should be aware that if it was a smaller desktop in terms of user base, I'd be fine with it. But since there's so many desktops that GNOME influences, I think that that they shouldn't remove stuff. That they should just be mindful of other desktops when they remove stuff.
You're looking at it from a desktop standpoint. It's a file manager standpoint.
Well, this is one example.
Anyway,
other stuff too.
Yeah.
Nautilus, or if you look GNOME, it's still their project. They can do with it whatever they want. If someone else is basing on GNOME, they should be watchful for what GNOME changes. GNOME team shouldn't be watchful for what other people do with their code.
I think my problem with that is that GNOME is being used by Ubuntu proper, and it's also being used by Fedora proper, and so and actually OpenSUSE too, really. And so if someone uses that, they're going to be stuck with kind of a neutered desktop, as far as I'm concerned.
But that's Nate. That's on them, though. That's on Ubuntu. That's on Fedora.
But I think the problem is that their GNOME has such a prominence, which I don't understand. I mean, I think Mate is a much more robust desktop than GNOME. I mean, GNOME really feels like duct tape and baling wire keeps that thing together, but Mate feels like a really solid project. And I think that's like that should be the prominent desktop. I mean, as much as I love Plasma, and I think Plasma is the best, I think Mate or XFC, MX Linux, those are much better desktops.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity.
What?
Go ahead, Chris.
Just out of curiosity, I asked this question a couple weeks ago when we were doing the. I can't remember which one it was. I think it was Solus. But Mate seemed to be a kind of like a GNOME 2. I mean, did they base it off of GNOME 2 or?
Yes.
Yeah,
it was a fork from GNOME 2. Yeah. But now it's GTK3 based now, so it's not. I mean, there's no.
For
They're
Fedora,
still placing the menu up at the top and stuff like that by default, which is a huge issue. It's just a style choice that I kind of brought me back to GNOME 2. So
the one thing I do like about GNOME is it gives Linux a unique interface that isn't reminiscent of Windows or Mac. I mean, because I feel like a lot of desktops have a little bit of Windows or Mac in them. We have Budgie, Windows 7. We have XFCE, some of which it looks like some of the older versions of Windows. We got Cinnamon, once again, Windows 7 now. My point is a lot of desktops are taking cues from Windows and Mac. However, GNOME doesn't. GNOME is very unique because in order to see your open applications, you have to go into activities, stuff like that. So I think
but GNOME.
Now wait. Have you looked at the Mac Finder versus Files?
Yeah, I would have to disagree that GNOME does take a lot of cues off of Mac.
It's freaking identical. I can work it. I went up there and was like, oh, I can use this, no problem. It's just like Files.
I was surprised at
having the workspaces where you click on it and they all, instead of them showing up across the top like they would with Mac, so they go down the right-hand side or whatever it is. But it's the same. It's where did that come from? I mean, Mac's had that since I think 10.8.
I mean, if we want to talk about desktops being compared back to Windows, yeah, they pretty much all are, because we're all talking about desktop metaphor with a start panel and a start button and all that stuff. And as soon as we get away from it, i.e. GNOME 3, then we all have problems because there's no desktop icons, because there's no menu button. I'm telling you, we go back and we fault that stuff, and then that's what we all like.
Yes. I don't think Windows 8 Metro. I mean, it really does.
Well, you know what? The first thing I'm going to say is, thank God that GNOME and KDE are not our only two choices.
No.
Right, but between both of them, it's a tough choice for me. But I would have to pick GNOME because I find that more of their features work better than KDE's. And by that,
they've done a lot better on the CPU usage.
That's because they don't have features.
I have one question though. With
I said that. Muted.
I got a question. And I think I might have asked it before, but I don't remember. Is it still using just basically like one thread, or did they finally fix that?
I think it's still the one.
It's still one single thread.
It's a core architectural issue that's not going to be fixable until 4.
Well, that's just dumb.
It's gonna be a problem to fix.
I just wanted to get back to what you were saying, Rocco, when you said that the GNOME team don't want you to use extensions. I thought, in my opinion, I thought it was the opposite way around. I thought they just wanted to concentrate on the core GNOME itself, and then other people can sort out the extensions and that to make it easy, so they don't have to worry about that stuff. That was just my opinion on what I thought they were doing, but
usually the extensions end up causing problems and crashes on GNOME that don't happen on GNOME without extensions. So, yeah. The one thing I would like to say about the whole GNOME thing and having responsibility because people follow them, I get it at the end of the day that it's their desktop environment. They can do whatever they want, and that's true. But in the same way that we view people in the limelight, like, say, an NFL football player, at the end of the day, it's his life, and he can do with it whatever he wants with it. But we also would like him to portray a life that our kids could look up to.
Yeah. Well, Rocco, that's the difference, because Budgie isn't just using the GTK toolkit to build their file manager. They're literally just yoinksing it straight from GNOME. If they were actually using the tools that GNOME provides, hence GTK, to build their project, yeah, they're using GNOME technologies, but it's being provided in a way that they can do whatever they want with it. The thing is that they're not actually doing that. They're just copying the file manager over.
Again,
so-
there's the problem of budget, not the problem of GNOME.
Well, that's like elementary. They use GTK Toolkit. They build their own file manager. They used to use Nautilus, but they don't now because they realize that if they want their desktop to work, they want it to work in a certain way. They have to do it themselves, not expect it to just hand it down to them.
Because at the end of the day, it is gnomes, and they can do whatever they want with it.
Yeah.
I find myself using GTK apps more often, and they look terrible on KDE. So I would have to choose GNOME over KDE. But again, I say thank God that those aren't my only two options because I don't use really either of them.
Tyler doing? He's doing a live unboxing.
He is. He's been doing it since he came in.
That is, I just got home from my lug meeting, and that is the first thing I wanted to do after I got home.
What is it that you're unboxing?
A monitor, I bet.
35-inch widescreen curved monitor.
Oh.
Yep.
Nice. Oh, nice.
All together now. Ooh.
I'd be highly impressed if he was actually streaming that out on his channel at the same time. So.
Well, it's just a shame though because he came in just as we're gonna.
Yeah, I mean the conversation is awesome, and I would love to continue it, but we're running out of time. So.
Yeah, I would say that GNOME that Qt looks better on, or I'd say that GTK looks better on KDE than Qt does on GNOME.
Agreed.
And especially because GNOME, you cannot customize Qt apps whatsoever unless you install third-party.
Actually, yeah, you hit the nail on the head.
Unless you install a third-party tool.
There's a third-party app called Qt 5CT that you can.
Yeah, I use that app.
Stuff.
But
Zeb,
KDE
last word, brother.
Last word.
Last word, brother.
Last word.
Did we make a choice?
We did Lubuntu 1904.
We did choose that. Okay, I was just making sure.
You mean I can make fun of Simon?
Yeah, that's if Simon feels like showing up next week. Just saying.
He said in the Telegram chat that he was going to pop in today because of the Ubuntu.
I'll see what I can do.
Remember that next weekend is Linux Fest Northwest, and Simon is attending that conference, so it's unlikely he might be able to come in.
That's not my fault. I didn't schedule it. Okay.
He's got a mobile phone, isn't he?
I'll see what I can do.
Okay.
Absolutely
Zeb, last
don't.
word.
Right. So last word. Thank you very much, Rocco, for putting this together. I say it every week, but it is really the highlight of my week, and I love coming on here. We're all getting excited about the new Ubuntu's that's coming in, but for me, it's all the spin-offs that can now come in. We've now seen all the goodness that have been put out there. So let's wait and see what some of the other spin-offs can do as well. I look forward to testing Ubuntu. It's not my favorite desktop environment. I don't think LXQT is the way to go. If you're going to go LXQT, you might as well go Kubuntu. But we'll give it a good shot because I like Simon. He's done some really good things over there. So I look forward to testing it next week.
Yeah, we like Dan too. Sam, last word.
Thanks again, Rocco, for the stream. I enjoy listening to everything. May not quite understand it all yet. I'm not as experienced as all of you, but I'm slowly learning.
No, that's what it's all about, brother. I think we're all learning. Peter, last word.
You're muted, Peter.
You're muted, Pete.
Best part.
He was probably talking about Astelio.
Of course he was.
I just unmuted you, Pete.
He just doesn't know how to work it yet.
Go ahead.
He does that quite often.
Is that working?
Yes.
Yeah, so we're all learning, and it's great. I love this community, and we are learning indeed. So thank you.
Eric, last word.
We're all learning because they keep changing everything.
This is true.
I thought I knew it all, and then they just keep changing. Thanks, Rocco. This is obviously such a great time. I enjoy seeing your face and everybody else's face in the YouTube chat and everything. It's wonderful. Great community. Nothing else to add. Thanks. Have a great week, everyone.
Nice. Joe, last word.
Thank you once again for a wonderful stream tonight. And I want to wish everybody happy holiday this weekend, happy Easter, and enjoy your day tomorrow, and have lots of sunshine and good weather. If it's 12 hours later, the other part of the world, I hope that everybody has a great day as well too. I got to always try to remember that because we're at different zones. But thank you very much again. This is, the biggest thing about this community is the learning process. Even when we kind of ask, like I've done myself a couple of times tonight, you ask what seemingly seems like a dumb question, but in my mind, I was always taught there is no such thing as a dumb question. The only one that there is the one that never gets asked. So, and lastly, have you hugged your Linux today?
Bash, last word, brother. Bash.
Hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So thanks for the stream as always, and I haven't had much practice at this, but I think it's by the way, I installed Arch.
Yes, I love it. Chris, last word.
Smash that like button, and I gotta echo Zeb with this, and that this is. I look forward to Saturday nights being here with you guys, and thank God for having thank you for having an open forum like this, allowing us to join in.
Awesome. It's good to have you, Chris. Silent, last word.
As always, thank you for having us, and thank you for hosting this platform. I think it's one of the few available that really brings the community together. There's such diverse experiences.
It is
Always great.
We have so many different types of people, so many different levels. I think it's awesome that we can all get together and talk about stuff and
except for low latency kernels.
Well, I mean, I don't mind talking about low latency kernels if it's kept to I don't know, a couple minutes, but Nate, last word.
Thank you anyway.
Hey, thanks again for having me. Thanks for having Silent Robot, because I like hearing his voice. And
right?
I look forward to Ubuntu, and should be good times. It's always fun here,
Good to have you back, Nate.
Thanks.
Frank, last word.
Rocco, Zeb, thank you for doing this. Really appreciate it. And I want to thank everyone who sent me papers for the project that I did. I really appreciate it, and I hope that you're not too unhappy with me next week.
Well, we're going to be posting that blog post on the BigDaddyLinux.com blog, and that will be Frank basically compiling everybody's opinions on what new users are, or everybody's opinion on what they consider a new user and the best distro for them. You can check that out. Barbara, last word.
Okay, one, I want to thank you, Rocco, and I want to thank Frank for all the work he's putting in to do that thing on what is a new user. And I just want to thank everybody else, because I live in the Linux dead zone. I feel like I'm probably the only person around who uses Linux. So this to me is this is my virtual lug, and I look forward to it every week. So thank you everybody for being great.
Yeah. Colin, last word.
Yeah, I'm a bit the same as Barb. I'm a bit of Linux dead zone as well, but I try to push it on as many people as I can, because if you're just surfing the web and doing that sort of simple stuff, it's good for you. But anyway, happy Easter, everyone, because it's Easter here. So I haven't started the chocolates yet. All right, so I've been controlling myself because it's only still early. Thank you for the stream, Rocco, and all the guys. And Frank, no one could be disappointed with anyone who puts in an effort, and regardless what it is. You're putting in effort. So I thank you for that. I sent you a bit of a spiel about whatever it was I sent. So it's good that you're doing that, and thanks for your efforts. So, and yeah, I look forward to this every week. It's one of the outlets you can just chat Linux with people who know Linux, and that's a good night, everyone, or day or morning or wherever you are.
There you go. Dan, last word, brother.
All right. Hey, looking forward to next week. Should be good. Looking forward to the feedback, honestly. We've made some polish here in 1904 release. We've got some other things that we want to work on, and this will give us maybe a couple other things to implement. So looking forward to that, honestly. And I posted a link in the YouTube chat for the downloads, lubuntu.me/downloads. And I also posted our manual in there too. I know a couple of weeks ago you guys talked about manuals and wikis and stuff like that. So have a look at ours and look forward to what you got there.
Nice. Paul, last word.
Yeah, thanks everybody. I always learn something, especially today. I was chatting with Ben and about the NVIDIA Optimus, which I have that on my laptop, and I cannot get anything good running on it. So yeah, thanks everybody.
All right, Ben, last word.
Thanks for having me again. Thanks to the Linux community for such a wonderful group of people. Right? I never thought I would find a group of friends like this just because of the operating system that I use. But I want to say thanks to the Sabayon community for making a good distro. And with that, I guess I'll just pass it along.
Steve.
Always a pleasure, Rocco. Having lots of fun. And by trying all these distributions, I keep finding out that nothing takes away from.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Big Pod, last word.
Kind of sleepy right now, but next week you're gonna see me more in this profile, and I'm probably gonna be looking into the wall more or away from the camera because I'm probably getting a new monitor for my laptop. So
nice.
It'll be really weird seeing me look forward while the camera is on the side.
Yeah, it's all good, brother. Yeah. Chicken, last word.
I have a baby, and it's
so awesome. I love it.
The question is, did you name your puppy Linux?
Linux, that would be so
No,
cute.
elementary.
That would be GNU Linux.
Hey, wait a minute. Alan, you said you have puppies, so you should do it. One's elementary, the other one's Linux.
They'd be puppy Linux.
I can have a whole
Didn't
bunch
you have
of-
about 7 of them or something?
There's 8 of them.
Oh my gosh.
So there's Kubuntu, Lubuntu, Ubuntu.
What I don't understand though.
Last one is Arch.
Peppermint, and then there's Linux Lite there at the end. He's the runt.
MX.
How can you just pick up one of them? I'd have all 8 in my arms. I just want to cuddle them all to death.
They're too squirmy. They
In 2
just
weeks,
they
he won't be able to
flop
put them on his lap.
How old are they anyway?
Well, they're about 2 days old now, 3 days old.
less than a day. They were born last night.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're handling them already. Wow. The mother's letting you do that?
Yeah, they're doing really well. She's very trustworthy, which is good. But when the dad comes around, she gets very protective.
Oof.
Yeah.
Pizza, last word.
Thanks to the Linux community and Rocco for hosting the stream and just having some people to talk to. Some other earlier people were saying that not many people use Linux where they are. How I used to feel that same way, but I've actually been noticing more and more people. Like sometimes I'm at a coffee shop and I see people with Linux laptops. Although I am in Seattle, a lot of people work for Microsoft who hate me. And but yeah, thanks for the stream, and I'll see some people at Linux Fest next week.
Nice.
Tell them you work for Boeing.
Yeah.
Dolphin, last word.
No, I don't work for Microsoft. A lot of my friends at school have parents who work for Microsoft, so everybody hates me.
Thank you for the stream. Thank you to all the MX users out there who keep us pushing us along, and have fun testing out Lubuntu next week.
Tyler? Or should I say Tyler's monitor? Last word.
So yeah, sorry I was late to my virtual lug, but I was having a lot of fun with my in real life lug members. That was fun. Shout out to the Lawrence Log. I will definitely be trying Lubuntu so I can mess with Simon in person next week at Linux Fest Northwest. So I probably won't be here to talk about it.
Make sure you film it.
Yeah, there you go. I'll film me messing with Simon at Linux Fest Northwest about Lubuntu.
All right. That's all the time we got. I want to thank everybody in the Linux community who helps out with these distributions. Dan, Frank, down to everybody that works on them. I appreciate all the hard work that you guys do. And we're going to try out Ubuntu this week. And then maybe next week we'll try out another one and another one. So remember, long live Linux.
Long live Linux.
Long live Linux.
Bye, everybody.
See ya.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Be the you.
See ya, puppy.
Live long and prosper.